$2.1 billion in advance for veterans benefits. Mr. Secretary, I need to say at the outset that because of the significant delays in submitting the budget, the committee is yet to receive detailed budget justification materials from the department. These materials are essential to the committee's work, and I hope we will see them very soon. The PACT Act has certainly been a dramatic change for veterans, and I also think VA has a good story to tell about its implementation. The new veterans enrolling and the number of PACT Act related claims received and processed. It also created the Toxic Exposure Fund. This year's budget request represents more than a $22 billion increase. The budget request includes a large increase for the Electronic Medical Records Program, a total of $3.5 billion. DoD stumbled out of the gate in its efforts to deploy the system, but after a pause, it successfully completed deployments throughout the country and abroad. VA announced that not only are deployments of the system resuming, but they are accelerating. With well more than $12 billion of taxpayer money invested, it's time to start seeing a return on the investment. But given the difficulties experienced in the Pacific Northwest, I look forward to hearing more about how these deployed sites will be brought up to standard and how VA plans to execute the new accelerated deployments. Mr. Secretary, you've been in the headlines recently as the VA reviews the size of its workforce. Members are hearing from our constituents regularly on this, and I look forward to hearing more about your plans to ensure you have the right people in the right places to take care of our veterans. In addition to updates on those big picture items, we also look forward to hearing details about the department's request for mental health services, including efforts to prevent veteran suicide, initiatives to prevent veterans homelessness, resources dedicated to care for women's veterans, and efforts to improve care for our rural veterans. We look forward to discussing these and other issues this morning. Before we hear from the Secretary, I'd like to recognize my colleague, Senator Ossoff, for any opening comments that he would have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A pleasure to be back with you again.
That's good.
And appreciate our bipartisan working relationship. And looking forward to continuing our shared efforts to support America's veterans. I want to welcome you, Secretary Collins, a fellow Georgian. Thank you for your service. And before we begin, as always, but particularly given events in the Middle East over the last several days, I want to express my gratitude to all of those who serve the United States with such courage and professionalism. I know we are all united in praying for the safety of service members, as well as diplomats and intelligence professionals who are overseas defending the nation. As we examine the department's fiscal year 2026 $441 billion request, I want to begin by emphasizing that it is our shared priority on this subcommittee across the aisle to ensure that the men and women who have defended the United States in uniform receive the care, support, and benefits that they've earned. And I emphasize that word, earned, because VA benefits are not handouts or giveaways. This is a sacred contract between the nation and those who have defended it, as well as their families. The purpose of today's hearing is for the Secretary to present the VA's budget request for fiscal year 2026. I echo the chairman in expressing my concern at the lack of supplemental materials and budget justification materials, which makes it very challenging for us to assess the merits of the overall request. I hope we can get some more details in the course of this hearing. We see that the overall discretionary and mandatory funding levels for VA have increased. We recognize, the chairman also mentioned, in the first 2 years of the PACT Act, between August of 22 and August of 24. In Georgia alone, Mr. Chairman, more than 6,500 new Georgia veterans enrolled in VA health care. We have seen 51,000 veterans with PACT Act claims granted. And of course, to serve America's veterans, the VA needs to be staffed appropriately to provide care both within and without the walls of VA facilities. And the VA needs to be welcoming to all veterans who have worn the uniform and to offer programs and assistance that these veterans need. Mr. Secretary, you've requested a significant increase to expedite the rollout of the electronic health records modernization effort, as well as an increase in the construction accounts. Perhaps most significantly, and I know of some substantial bipartisan concern, we see a shift of $18 billion away from what Congress advanced last fiscal year for VA medical care. Those funds have been reprogrammed toward the toxic exposure funds, of course, a worthy endeavor and something that was established via the PACT Act, but there is substantial concern about this cut to the medical care account. Hope we can get some more details on that in the course of this hearing. And Mr. Secretary, you know that now and long predating your tenure, Georgia veterans and veterans across the country are deeply frustrated. They're frustrated by wait times for appointments and care. They're frustrated by years-long adjudication of their claims and the feeling that they're just slamming their head into a brick wall when they try to claim the benefits they've earned through their service. Veterans are frustrated that they can't get answers and basic information from the department. And frankly, Mr. Secretary, members of Congress are frustrated that we can't get basic answers and information from the department. And if you step back and think about it, if United States senators can't get transparency from the VA, what hope is there for the rest of the country? Mr. Secretary, when you came and met with me in advance of your confirmation, you promised me that as a former member of Congress, you understood the vital role of congressional oversight and pledged to be transparent and responsive. But to be very candid with you, so far this year, although I've appreciated our opportunities to speak, the department has been unresponsive to congressional oversight and has acted unilaterally without consultation of Congress in ways that I think you're aware have caused substantial concern and opposition on both sides of the aisle and in both chambers of Congress. So I appreciate that you've been willing to get on the phone when I call, but Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, I don't call just to hear the sound of your voice. I want to make sure the department is providing this subcommittee with the information that members of Congress have requested so that we can make sound decisions on behalf of our constituents and America's veterans. So we are not off to a great start when it comes to transparency and responsiveness, but I'm hoping that can change and we can build an effective working relationship. There are a few core concerns where we need more transparency with respect to contract cancellations, the VASP program, staffing levels, the budget justification, supplementary materials that this subcommittee receives almost always in advance of this hearing, but which we lack today. And members of this subcommittee and members of the Senate, Mr. Secretary, are going to continue to ask for information about your plans and intentions and department operations, because as you know from your time in Congress, that's our job. It's what we were elected to do. We can't legislate just based on someone's word or promise. We have to verify and understand precisely what you and other members of the executive branch are doing. So today I look forward to hearing how the specifics of your FY26 request will ensure that, for example, clinical staffing gaps are filled. I also have some questions, as you anticipate, and we discussed yesterday, Mr. Secretary, about some specific Georgia facilities. I thank you for your service to the nation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time.
Thank you. You're recognized, Senator Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member. It's good to see both of you and also the other members that are here today. And Chairman, thanks for the opportunity. And Ranking Member, again, it's always good to be with a fellow Georgian. And there's a lot of things going on. One of the things is my first opportunity to come before this committee, and I've looking forward to it for a while, to look at where we're at, to take an assessment in about 4.5 months into my tenure, also into, roughly about halfway through the first 5.5, 6 months of the administration. And one of the things that I have found, and I expressed this to you before, is I've traveled about 17 states so far, 16, 17 states, about 60 facilities, and seeing firsthand what our VA is capable of, and what we're doing and the issues and the struggles that we have as an organization that for the years has had issues. And I think this is the thing that I want to bring out as we go forward. It's not a matter of what, if there's a problem, there has been a problem. And I think this transcends even, my time definitely as secretary, but even really coming into my time when I was in Congress for over 8 years. We've seen this in Georgia. We've seen this. I was here in Congress when the first issues started coming out of Augusta, Georgia, when it started coming out of Phoenix, when we have found the Choice Act. That's how we then came to the Mission Act, which then leads to a lot of where we are today. Now, some of the things that I have said before, and I want to say again, is that we are a very special group. We're the largest, of course, of all the federal agencies outside of DOD. And if you break DOD up, we're actually the largest single agency. We're larger than the active duty Army personnel-wise. When we look at that, and you look at the mission that we have and the silos that have been created many times in our hospitals and our benefits, one of the things I want to be very specific about is that we treat the best clients in the world. We have a very specific purpose. We're there to treat the veteran. And that became my core mission when we first started this, was to make sure that veterans were our center focus and not the organization itself. As a member of Congress and as I'm hearing from both chairman and ranking member this morning, there is difficulty at times, and especially when 60% of your phone calls have to do with VA-related items, whether you're a member of this committee or not. That's a lot, and I've already said before that when 60% of the VA constituent calls have to do with VA, then that's a failure on our part. Somewhere along the way, we've not made it either easy enough or processed enough or give answers well enough to make sure that the veteran is getting what they have, and I appreciate what the ranking member said, earned. As one of those who has served for over 23 years in the Air Force and in the Navy as well, it is something that I take very seriously. It's an honor. It's not a gift from the government. It's an earned benefit when you raised your right hand. When we look at this, it has made me understand how much that we have to go and how far we need to get there. In the past, what I have heard when I was in the Hill and off the Hill is the issues of delays, wait times, and others, which, by the way, is also an interesting issue. And it's also interesting for us as we have to deal with the realities of our VA Medical Center, which is the largest healthcare system in the country, is that we're one of the few that actually take wait times and use them the way that we do. Most are doing with the customer satisfaction. They look at wait times and they vary it because of the population they have. We need to make sure that our wait times for our veteran is something that they can get not only in our system, but outside of our system. Community care coupled with our direct care is something that is vital. It's what the Mission Act requires, and we're going to actually put that in purpose. We've not had that the last few years. We're actually putting a re-emphasis on it. I will hit more on healthcare, and I look forward to our health records management system. I think that's a great discussion we need to have. And Mr. Chairman, you brought that up, and it's been brought up by the ranking member as well. This is vital to not only get our healthcare records management system up to date, taking what has happened and moving us forward in the future, because right now it is a problem with our community care, and it's a problem internally as well, because our system is not where it needs to be. Using a system that is very outdated. I want to move real quickly to our disabilities side, our veterans benefit. One of the things that this morning we were able to actually announce that we have finished 2 million disability claims this year faster than has ever been done in light of all that is going on, and we're looking to be 14% higher over the year by the year end of processing disability claims. When I took over in February and January 20th, and when I came in the first week of February, was 260,000 of our backlog disabilities over 125 days. That number is now under 190. We've cut almost 71,000 off of our disability claims in a little over 3.5 months. What that does, it clears up our backlog, it gets our answers to our veterans quicker, and it makes sure they get what they want and what they need. Overall, the VA is this, and I'm going to end with this. I don't think that anything that I have wanted, expressed, or said for my goals for the VA are different than any VSO, any member of Congress, any member of a veteran who wants the same. They want an access that is easy. They want an access that is good. They want a quality facility. They want an excellent use and efficiency of the taxpayer dollar, and I believe that is what we're working toward. We all have differences on how to get there, and that's what these committee hearings are for, and that's how we work together. And I look forward to working with this committee as we move forward and continuing to answer questions in the best way we possibly can. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And with that, we'll start our round of 5-minute questions. Mr. Secretary, last year's VA budget, which was not under your watch, last year's VA budget request took a great amount of risk with some of the assumptions it made. VA assumed it had sufficient carryover balances to avoid requesting a second bite for veterans' medical care, yet later told Congress that it had a $12 billion shortfall in those accounts, an amount subsequently revised to $6 billion. VA also told Congress that it would exhaust its benefits funding before the end of the fiscal year, prompting us to pass an emergency supplemental. Only afterwards did we learn that VA didn't actually utilize any of that supplemental funding. After the events of last year, the appetite for continued bailouts in Congress is extremely low. Mr. Secretary, how much risk is VA assuming with with this budget, and how confident are you that the data and assumptions underlying the request are sound?
Mr. Chairman, I think that was one of the biggest issues that came up consistently in my confirmation hearings with the, the information that was given, taken back, moved forward. As we've all come to not rehash the entire episode altogether, there was assumptions made and also hirings and others that took funds, and there was a rapid acceleration that, especially in the VBA side, that took that money down. What we are doing and what I have told our budget folks, and I've also told each of our business lines, is that they're to work within the numbers that we have. They're to look ahead and make sure that there's nothing in the underlying assumptions for our carryovers and the funds have. I ask this question almost weekly and making sure that we're at, because I will not come up here in a situation in which we've overspent or at least perceived overspent. That was the problem that I think, again, not having a part of it last year, that was the part that bothered me the most, was their numbers were not adding up when they came up here. And then after even the OIG report and other reports came out, it just was frankly to some mismanagement in how we were hiring and how we were appropriating money and not keeping up with it. I'm very solid in what I believe our numbers are for this year. I believe that the backing is solid on that as well. My budget people are here as well, and I think they'll agree with that going forward. So I think where we're at right now is where we need to be to make sure that we're spending appropriately and making sure the services are available.
Very good. Mr. Secretary, I know something that's very important to you is veteran suicide, which it is to me and so many other members of this committee on both sides of the aisle. VA has numerous suicide prevention initiatives, and yet we still see elevated suicide rates among veterans relative to their civilian counterparts. Can you discuss how the VA is approaching suicide prevention, and under your leadership, what current initiatives you believe are working to reverse these negative trends?
Chairman, this is the one that really literally keeps me up at night if I think about this. And when I get the reports coming in from the field, especially when we have had death by suicide occurring on our own campuses, I get those notifications immediately. And then we have, what has happened since 2008 is a number that's not really changed. 2008, 17 to 22 veterans taking their own life. The issue that I have is we're spending approximately in the budget $588 million for prevention, what is called prevention, but yet we're still not seeing anything different. So what I'm looking at is a fresh new approach. We're going to look at how and of those numbers, 17 to 20 veterans, depending on the numbers you use, half of them have not had contact with the VA. They've not been in our system, in other words. So things like the Fox Grant program, which reaches out to organizations, which I encourage is to be renewed this time. 95 organizations have been a part of that, and they're reaching out and helping veterans who are not necessarily enrolled in our VA system. They're bringing them in. I have also been reaching out to other organizations, going to different places, nonprofits and others, to say, can we work together? Because at this point, I think the monies that you're appropriating, the money that we're trying to spend, goes to one thing, is that can we help a veteran not get to the point where they feel like they have to take their own life? But for me, it's just a complete relook at how we're doing it. We can't keep doing the same things the same way and expect different results. We've got to make sure that we're doing it differently.
Very good. Senator Austin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you again, Mr. Secretary. So just to start with the basics here, Mr. Secretary, the total all-in request for FY26 is $441.2 billion, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
And how much of your medical services request is for personnel? And how many personnel through this medical services request do you intend to employ in FY26?
At the current, and I also have, I have my budget, Andrew, here as well, if there's the numbers that we need, if Mr. Chairman, with yours. The issue that you brought up is right now there are currently 465,000 employees in VA as a whole. VHA has 409,000 of those.
I'm so sorry, Mr. The
Yeah.
question is, how many staff do you intend to employ through the medical services budget in FY26?
Do we, Andrew?
396,000?
396,000.
396,000.
Yes.
Okay. The FY25 request, and just to be clear, that's intended staffing of medical services in FY26? Say the number again.
395?
396,000.
396,000.
396,000. Okay.
Yes.
How many physicians do you intend to employ in FY26?
Physicians.
Oh, physicians, we employ a large number of physicians.
I'm sorry, who are you?
Andrew is our budget. Right now, we currently have 28,868 physicians.
Yeah, so how many physicians do you intend to employ in FY26?
We're not cutting physicians, so at this point in time, under that budget, we're still looking
So,
to continue at 28,868 at minimum, because we're also having to add physicians which are not, which are exempt. So we're adding
here's
those
what we
as can.
usually,
And because,
this is, for example, the budget request from 25, and it specifies that for 25, we're requested 25,099 physicians. So we usually get this in advance of this hearing. So my question is just how many doctors you intend to employ?
yeah, and at this point in time, I'll take that and get it back to you. As I told you yesterday on the phone, there'll be some more information coming later this week.
Okay, how about dentists?
Same answer.
Do you have the number for nurses?
We currently employ 91,040. I'll have the.
But my question is how many to
And
be-
I understand, and the breakdown will be provided as I said yesterday.
Okay, well, how have you calculated the money you need for personnel without having yet decided how many personnel to employ?
In the breakdown of the budget, which right now is still going on, these are the numbers that we are using to go forward from last year's budget into this year's budget. And at this point, there is also a gap in how many we have currently hired and not hired. And so at this point, I'll have the numbers for you that we've not provided yet. We'll be providing those numbers.
But you've proposed about $17 or $18 billion cut to the medical services account, correct?
That is not, the president's budget makes adjustments to the funding that devote additional funding appropriate fund to community care. This is not a cut to
No,
total to funding to VHA. In fact, the total medical care budget grew by 17% to $24 billion.
Not medical care, medical services. So here's your,
Okay.
just to be clear, I mean, the chairman mentioned this, we usually get
I understand
this,
completely.
which specifies how many folks you intend to employ. We have a 26-page PowerPoint, but in that 26-page PowerPoint, here are specified about $17 billion in cuts to the medical services budget. So what are you cutting in medical services? Specifically, who are you cutting, since that's exclusively personnel?
Again, and this is the issue that we have right now, and I'll just state this for either of us to go back in circles. We'll be providing more of those numbers, as I said yesterday on our phone call this week. So at this point in time, the numbers that we're providing are the numbers that we have at this point. I'll be happy to talk to you further about those later.
And understand that's why we usually get these in advance of this hearing. I mean, I'm wondering if we need to reconvene having received the full budget request. Because the thing that is causing a lot of consternation is this proposed $17, $18 billion cut to medical services. I mean, and so today is the budget hearing where you justify the budget request. So how do you justify this cut to medical services, and who are you going to fire in order to pay for it?
And I'll go back to the same answer I gave you just a few minutes ago. I mean, in this process, we'll have the more information on that part of it as we go forward. The basis of the budget was based on our workforce as it existed and moving forward, and the numbers have not been cut to the medical
I'm sorry, yes,
the
it
care
has.
budget.
You have in your PowerPoint here $17 to $18 billion in cuts to medical services. Again, this is a 26-page PowerPoint to justify the budget. So, and this is the budget hearing. So who's getting fired? I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if we need to reconvene after they send us the materials, but I think this is insufficient. Clearly, and I'll follow up in my next round. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary, for being here today, and thank you for the work that you do. You spoke in your earlier comments about the weight system, and I've been proud to work on a program recently the external provider scheduling system. And the system uses technology to link VA scheduling teams to providers in the community, allowing them to directly see available appointments and then schedule appointments for veterans. This makes the scheduling process much more efficient, and it increases the number of appointments schedulers can schedule per day, enabling veterans to receive care sooner. Unfortunately, last year, the administration slow-walked and even rolled back the rollout of EPS at some VA medical centers. Mr. Secretary, given the uncertainty that we saw with the EPS rollout last year, stakeholders are rightfully on high alert for program disruptions. Can you provide some reassurance that the EPS rollout will continue without disruption under the current administration? And do you think it would be beneficial to create a line item for EPS to create greater certainty for the program and to ensure its success?
Senator, I think that is one of, as you mentioned, that is one of the biggest issues that is currently out there as far as because of how we rate wait times as far as from direct care to community care and back. Yes, we're going to continue with EPS, and EPS has resulted in over 28,000 appointments scheduled and more than 7,400 provider services onboarded just in the Omaha VAMPC as well. Just had 56 providers brought on and 755 coming in the queue. It's also showed a reduction in the number of days from file entry date going forward to first scheduled appointment, which is the important date. How much time does it take to get that first contact to then get a appointment? So we're doing everything we possibly can. Those will be definitely used as we go forward for the scheduling on what we can get, and I look forward to working with that as we go forward, and also trying to find any other way that we could, especially with a third-party system, which is especially when you deal with our community partners as well. This also leads into another discussion at some point concerning the electronic health records management system, which does not communicate well
Exactly.
to anybody. So.
Right. Would it be helpful to you to make it a line item in the budget, the EPS system?
I think if that's the feeling of this body as well, it's not something we would oppose.
Okay, thank you. As you know, VA facilities are old, several decades old, and the costly renovations, they just don't cut it anymore. In Nebraska, our Omaha VA Medical Center is 75 years old this year, and I've been working to ensure a new VA Medical Center in Omaha as a priority. And I was pleased to see that the department requested a major increase in the major construction account. Mr. Secretary, can you talk about the need to continue to invest in our VA infrastructure and the department's plans for ensuring a strong VA footprint?
Yes, I can. And again, as you made reference to, that's a $3 billion to $1 billion increase in the major construction as we look forward. This also brings up a bigger issue, and I think this is for the chairman and for everybody here. When you look at our construction processes, and I'm glad to do, because most of our facilities we're averaging about 60 years in age of these facilities. The problem we're having is, though, and being in over the past few years, we've, especially in Congress, we've seen the problems of building facilities. We saw this in Colorado. We've seen it in other places in the expanding cost of these facilities. Part of that is how we're funding these. We're starting out with the proposition that I will give, we'll put into the budget in major construction, say $100 million to do a site study. Then we'll come back the next year and we'll do maybe even a little bit more, $200 million to do land prep. After a while, you've now run a project that should take 24 months. You've run it into almost 8 to 10 years, Louisville being an example and others being an example of how long this can get strung out. And also you've increased the cost. So I'm glad we're funding it, but we need to look at more of a front-end funding model, especially if we're going to replace whole hospitals. I give this example. They're looking right now. There's a proposal that is increased by several $100 million just in the last few years in St. Louis to replace that center. It's now up to $1.7 billion. Has not been moved forward on, but it's increasing every year due to regular costs. And I will just refer it back to a hospital in my hometown of Gainesville, Georgia, which built a similar size facility. They built it for half of that, more than half of that price, and did it in less than 24 months. we've got to get out of this process of overseeing and completely redo how we're looking at major
I
construction.
agree with you on that. It's important to be able to move it because then you're using taxpayer dollars to provide for our veterans in a more responsible manner as well. I think we have to also look at flexibility. And when I was first elected to the Senate, one of the first things I did was write the chip in for Vets Act. And we have had such success in the Omaha area with that partnership established with the community. So I thank the VA for being responsive in processes like that so we can continue to provide services to VA as we work to make better use of taxpayer money on the larger facilities that, of course, are also needed. So thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, and we look forward to continuing support of the chip in as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Hoven.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to you and the ranking member for having this hearing today. Secretary, I want to start actually by thanking you. Seems to me that to run a very large agency like the VA successfully, you have to do a number of things. First, provide leadership, then build a strong team, and then empower them. And from what I've seen, that's just exactly what you're doing. And the example I want to point to is the Fargo National Veterans Cemetery. Because of your strong leadership and you're willing to work with us, we've created a partnership between the VA, so your agency, the state of North Dakota, the private sector, and veterans to move forward on a very important project for our veterans in the region that's going to be a huge benefit to our state of North Dakota. This is our one and only federal cemetery, veteran cemetery. It's going to serve all of western Minnesota and everything in South Dakota all the way over to Spearfish. I say that for the benefit of my colleague, Senator Rounds, and we were governors together, so we go back a long ways. But South Dakota's got a nice cemetery for our veterans way out in the western end. And so this is incredibly important for this region of the country. And you were willing to sit down and listen to what we're trying to accomplish. And then you directed your people to work with us. I want to give a special thanks to John Lauder, to Darrell Owens, and also to Don Bivens, but mostly to you, because it's that kind of leadership that enabled you to actually leverage your resources. So we're talking about your resources today, and you only have so many resources at the federal VA, and you're always going to have demand for more services than you're ever going to have resources to supply. So here you are leveraging state and private sector resources in a very significant way to do a lot more for veterans where they really need the help. And so for the veterans and their families, they're going to now have a cemetery in the Fargo-Moorhead region, which is more than 250,000 people right there. And then you've got, as I say, that huge area that you're going to serve. And that doesn't happen without the right kind of leadership. And so big thank you to you, but also it emphasizes how important it is, and I want to very respectfully ask our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, work with us to get more of your folks in place. For example, the Assistant Secretary overseeing the cemetery, Sam Brown, he hadn't been confirmed yet. Don Bivens, who's the going to be your congressional person for the Senate, he hadn't been confirmed yet. You need these folks in place. And serving veterans has never been a partisan issue. It's an issue that we all need to work on together. And so the point of this is, first, big thank you. And this is so important that we're moving forward now the right way, and we look forward to continue to work with you on it. But it really highlights the need for you to get your folks, your team in place so you can do more of it.
I appreciate that, Senator. Let me just also emphasize this as well. It's not just Sam at our National Cemetery as well. Our CFO is still waiting, Topping is still waiting to be confirmed as well. That's a big issue, I know, especially since we're sitting here discussing budget. Also, our General Counsel. We're sitting here, we're in June right now going forward. So any encouragement that we could to get these passed, and I understand that, differences in bodies and members wanting to vote, but at least put them to the floor and vote them because it does have an effect in the departments, not just mine, but others. But right now we have a single confirmed appointment in our department. We have the deputy and that's it.
Yeah, and 100%, and you've gone through the full process, and you bring experience not only as a congressman, but as a colonel in the military, as somebody who's served in combat. I love the fact that you're Dad was in the highway patrol. I was governor, so you know how much I love the highway patrol. So, I mean, you just bring that background, and I would hope that everybody could look at that and say, okay, sure, if there's somebody in there that there's truly an issue and they're controversial, whatever, but let's see if we can't get more of these folks on board to serve our veterans. So that's my pitch there, as well as a thank you, big thank you. The other thing I want to bring up briefly is for veterans getting access to VA reimbursement in nursing homes, they have to go through a whole additional set of reviews and regulations, which a lot of nursing homes won't do. And if we could just make those reviews and requirements consistent with what CMS requires, I think a lot more nursing homes would accept VA reimbursement for veterans, which is really important to the family because they don't have to dissipate all their resources before they would go on Medicaid, right?
Yep.
And then they can have that veteran in their community. So, and the Office of Federal Compact Compliance Programs, OFCCP. I say that for a reason. It sounds kind of bureaucratic, governmental, and that's exactly the process. When they're throwing a lot of things in place that require duplicate costs, and whatever you can do to work with us there, I think would really help veterans get access to long-term.
Senator, I'm looking for everybody, because that is one of the issues that we look forward to, is our older veteran population. This is going to become more and more of an issue as we move forward. It's also something we have to look at. It is concerning to me that we do have duplicative, not only in this area of long-term care, but others as well. It's one of the biggest things that I have faced in my tenure in just a large bureaucratic organization. And I think that's it's I said this before, and I'll just continue to say it. Unfortunately, the VA has become sort of the example that's used most of the time for bureaucratic organizations that are large and unwieldy and don't get stuff done. I'm trying to streamline that to where we can get decisions made a lot quicker.
Right on, and it's not just institutional long-term care; it's also home care.
Exactly.
And so that's a big deal, really big deal too.
Yeah, and looking forward to, we're continuing to up with the Elizabeth Dole Act and continue to move forward on a lot of that caregiver issues that are going to be coming along.
Again, thank you, Secretary. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hyde-Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. We so appreciate your willingness to serve, and your leadership is very much appreciated by this body. You've got a tall drink of water in front of you, so thank you for stepping up to that. And we appreciate you coming to Mississippi back in April to the State Veterans Home there on the Gulf Coast. That meant a lot to the community and to our veterans that we have there. Very important segment of our society on the Gulf Coast. We have about 180,000 veterans in Mississippi, and these men and women stepped forward, many from rural towns and small areas. It amazes me the percentage of veterans that we have that came out of small towns that didn't even have a red light in them. We are very proud of that because it's our duty to ensure when they come home that they do have access to quality care that's going to meet their specific needs. And as the challenge that you and I both are aware of that they face is the shortfall in the infrastructure, particularly construction funding for VA medical centers. And the FY 2024 VA State Home Construction Grand Priority included 184 projects, yet only 10 were approved for funding. Many of these delayed projects involve the basic repairs as well as some critical upgrades that are truly critical, but things that direct effectively the quality and safety of our veterans and the care that you're so well aware of. So how does your administration plan to address the department's growing infrastructure needs given the reality of limited construction funding?
Well, you've hit, and that's what we had hit a little bit earlier, and I want to just go specific, and you were talking about the 184 projects on the priority list and 10 approved for funding. This is the problem that we're facing all along, and it's not something that goes away. And it's the reoccurring maintenance issues, it's the growth issues. There's areas, our home state of Georgia, Atlanta is one that is growing probably one of the fastest in the country, and yet going and we look through long-term construction plans, it's trying to get the process moving. the big thing, and I would love to have both sides of the aisle help on this. We really need to go back and take a look at how we're doing long-term construction inside the VA, and it's going to come from statute a great deal because we have, Corps of Engineer involvement. We've got major projects. We've got a lot of different things that really just throw a roadblock into how we are to get these projects done. And what we're wanting to do is in fact, we moved some monies this year to get some non-reoccurring maintenance costs, knocked off that have been lingering. So we used some of that money in that was able to, before I got there and even afterward. One of the reasons a significantly larger ask, we do have a larger ask is because of in 26 was geared toward critical and safety needs as we go forward, but we did not get to ask for a full capital account on the previous budget, which was not ours because of the year-long CR and the CR process. That's another issue that's got to come involved in this as we go forward. So we're looking at everything we possibly can. And in some of the areas where hospitals may not be in a process of being, especially from the major hospitals being rebuilt, is can we do larger size C-box clinics that can take some of the pressure off of some of our hospitals and then, redo some of what is in our current hospital setup.
And thank you for your work on that because, you certainly have it focused and you're certainly aiming to that. But, and you and I both are so aware of the long wait times for appointments, and I know that you're working on that, the red tape that trying to access the care and the benefits that they've earned. But despite the record levels of funding for the VA in recent years, many of these frustrations still remain. So you want to share with us what your department is doing to make sure the funding plus-ups are translating into faster, more efficient care for veterans?
Well, we're looking at back now and also taking advantage of all the resources that we have. And I think that's been one of the issues that I've looked at in just the last few months is, are we using the resources given by Congress, not from just a dollar and cent standpoint, but also from the aspect of using our community care networks and using the balance that we have, especially in our growing areas, to make sure that veterans can get the care that they need quicker. Unfortunately, in the last little bit, and especially in the last few years, we've seen a move away from community care and to keep it more internal, keep it in-house. And I won't go to the national motivations for that. I think there was many involved, but I believe VA care is VA care no matter where we're paying the bill at. And because we're going to hold them to the same high standards. So we've got to look at it from a perspective of, are we using our community care partners, which sometimes are quicker than our direct care, and many times we're quicker in our direct care than our community partners. But in certain specialty areas, we also using the best medical interest standard now, which is also giving the doctor and the veteran much more of a discussion together on what is the best medical interest for that veteran to get that care quicker and in the process they need.
Yeah, and we're seeing results there.
Yep.
I certainly appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Murray.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and our ranking member, Senator Ossoff. Good to work with both of you on this really critical committee. Secretary Collins, you are charged with making sure we keep our promises to our veterans. And I will tell you, as the daughter of a veteran, one who had great need for the VA benefits, I take this work seriously. Now, Mr. Secretary, I know you hate scaring our veterans, but here's what I know. When you fire thousands of VA staff with no rationale beside Musk said so, that really scares veterans. When you cancel hundreds of contracts, including a cancer registry in my state, that scares veterans. When you muzzle our researchers, that scares veterans. When you eliminate the VASP program, which helps save veterans from foreclosure on their homes, that scares veterans. When you remove language saying veterans and doctors can't be discriminated against based on their political views or marital status with no explanation until after people called it out, that scares veterans. And more than just scaring veterans, it puts the care and the support they have not only earned, but are entitled to in serious jeopardy. So if you're concerned about scaring veterans, my suggestion is to stop doing what you're doing. Focus on what matters. Stop implementing policies with no explanation or analysis. Lift the hiring freeze and get our facilities fully staffed. So to that end, I have a few questions about some of the actions that veterans have told me they are deeply concerned about. And I hope today you can put their minds at ease and give us some clear, straightforward answers. Secretary Collins, there's been a lot of discussion regarding your decision to modify VA provider guidelines that would open the door to discrimination. You struck the words age, national origin, politics, marital status, and disability from the anti-discrimination policy that was applied to our VA hospitals and our clinics. When you changed the guidelines and removed the words making clear when discrimination is not tolerated, what you actually signaled to veterans across the country that they may be actually denied the care that they need. So, Mr. Secretary, if you insist these categories are already covered by federal law, and therefore your changes do not provide openings for discrimination, will you commit then to reinstating the previous policy?
Senator, this is exactly what, and I appreciate you taking my own words, because it's about time that somebody up here actually decided that they were not going to continue to repeat false things that keep people and veterans from actually trusting the VA. And by bringing this up again, which was a Guardian article, which, by the way, 2 major publications, the Post and Times, others who looked into this said there's nothing there, but the Guardian, who wanted clickbait, decided to run with something, and then it was amplified, is scaring veterans. And if they're concerned, because also understand something. No, let me finish this, because this is important. Because I've been accused of this. It's not scaring. Nothing was changed that actually affected it. This is the problem we're seeing. Title 5 USO Code 2302 prevents discrimination based on marital status, political affiliation. 7102 participation rights and barring interference with those rights, all there. VHA Directive 1019 governing all medical services provided by VA and prohibits discrimination on the basis of marital status or political affiliation. There's nothing changed. By the way, our bylaws also don't say that we have to feed our patients 3 times a day. Should we put that in there specifically?
Well, Mr. Secretary.
No, I'm not going to let you get away with this.
I'm going to tell. I have the floor for a second.
No, I mean, you're not being truthful with this.
What I'm telling you is what veterans hear and what Americans hear. Please listen. When you take something out, it says that's been eliminated. Period.
No, it does not.
Well,
only when you have a cheap magazine like the Guardian who wants to put it out there and put it in a position and then have actually people of your stature and others who amplified it. How can it be that something that doesn't change anything, that fact checkers have already said doesn't change anything?
Okay, your position is it doesn't change anything.
It doesn't.
I hear you.
There is no position. It is the fact.
Well, do you think it's possible to be eligible for care and still be discriminated against when you try to access health care?
No one is discriminated against at the VA, and by simply repeating that could keep somebody from getting the critical mental health care that they need, and that would be on you and anybody else that wants to repeat it.
Well, Mr. Secretary, in fact, many of us have heard from women veterans.
Then did you help correct them?
Mr. Secretary.
Did you help correct them? Or did you blind the line?
Did you? You took the word
I did.
out.
I've been on TV. I put out videos. I've done everything because of a false article. I cannot believe we're still going down this route.
Well, I can believe it.
It's amazing.
I can believe it when you take words out that people hear them and I'm telling you that, Mr. Secretary. I'm simply telling you when you took those words out, people heard it in a specific way. Therefore, I'm asking you, why don't you put them back in and eliminate
No, they heard it in a specific way because a reporter who looked for clicks decided to write an article that he knew was false.
Again, I have heard from women veterans about experiences, which is why I have...
Do you have an example that you can give to me? Because I'll make sure it's corrected. Nobody is to be discriminated against.
You're going to call each individual woman in the country and tell them they're not going to be discriminated
There's not every woman in the country that's done this because, number one,
well, let me move on. Let me move on. I want to ask you about the Toxic Exposure Fund. This is really critical. Congress has already appropriated funding for medical care, which has been passed into law. Your budget request proposes to cancel $18 billion of that money and shift it over to the Toxic Exposures Fund. I am supportive of putting funds where they're needed, but I do want to make sure that you are aware there are specific limitations for the use of those funds that are in statute. These are guardrails. There are guardrails to prevent misuse and address concerns. We put that in because of concerns from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who were very concerned about turning that into a slush fund. So can you commit to us that you will abide by those limitations for all the funds being spent from the TEF to include agreements which made with the committee about what expenses incident to delivery of care means?
We're committed to following the law and the stuff that we're supposed to in this, and I know this was a concern from previous administration because the previous secretary to my seat actually said he could do whatever he wanted to with those funds.
Okay,
I'm willing to work with this committee, as I have said and told you before. I'll work with this committee to follow the rules on
All
that.
I'm asking is, you're asking to move $18 billion into that fund. Are you committed to following the guardrails, the language, the statute language that surrounds those funds? Because, Mr. Secretary, if that is true, then how can you commit that the veterans who were and are eligible for care that is unrelated to toxic exposures will not have their care cut off or limited because of the $18 billion decrease to funds?
Because as we look at our budgets and we take the monies that are coming in, we're going to meet the needs of the veterans who come before us.
Well, I find it really challenging to think that you can take $18 billion out of general medical care, put it into the TEF fund, and I have no problems with the TEF fund as long as we live by the limitations, but that is care that other veterans will not see. And let me just ask you, Mr. Chairman, if I have time, one final question. I have repeatedly raised concerns over the direction VA is taking with the research program. And now it was reported that VA officials are ordering physicians and scientists to not publish their work without seeking approval from Trump's political appointees. According to a VA official, this policy is specifically in place to prevent, and I quote, negative national exposure. So, Mr. Secretary, if a research finding would advance veterans' health but does not align with the administration priorities, will you allow it to be published?
I'm not familiar with the question you have and not going to answer a hypothetical, but I don't foresee anything. We've not done anything to restrict our researchers in going forward.
Well, this is on your website.
Okay, we're not restricting our researchers. I mean, I don't know how else to answer the question.
If you are ordering physicians and scientists to not publish their work without seeking approval, you can answer that in a forced way by saying, yes, of course, we're not going to say no. But then I'm asking.
That had nothing to, I think if at best, and I'm not even sure this is at best, but I'm going to reach here and say this is also discussing a policy that had nothing to do with research and publishing research. It had a meeting about talking to media on other issues. But I'm happy to take this and see what you're actually discussing, but nothing has changed as far as we know.
So
no, the researchers can do their research.
All researchers. You will not deny a research that shows that this whatever helps veterans.
Again, hypotheticals. I mean, we can go down all that. I can't answer a question. We don't have an exact, a question in the end. I mean, an end to a question.
I'm sorry, but
is
it leaves
this
me with the question,
this
then
research or that research?
Arbitrarily, you're going to say no to any kind of.
I'm not at this point. I'm not saying either way, Senator. I'm sitting here saying that we're not restricting it.
That leaves me very curious about how you're going to move forward on research. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Chair Collins.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Secretary. Maine has one of the highest percentages of veterans in the entire country, something about which we are very proud. We are also one of the most rural states in the country. So the work done by the Office of Rural Health is essential in our state and other rural states. The VA received $15 million in fiscal year 2025 to support the Highly Rural Transportation Grant Program, yet many rural veterans in Maine still lack options for getting themselves to the VA Medical Center in Augusta. Just to give you an example, from my hometown of Caribou, Maine, it is an 8-hour, 500-mile round trip to drive to get to the Togus Hospital, in the VA hospital in Augusta, and back. Current rules are really strange. They limit the eligibility to counties with fewer than 7 people per square mile. Now, even in one of the most rural states in the country, Maine, that means that only one county, Piscataquis County, of our 16 counties is eligible to receive a grant. So I joined with several of my colleagues to introduce a bipartisan bill that would change this formula and expand eligibility for this grant program. Do you think that this is a bill that you could work with us on to make sure that our rural veterans can get to the VA hospital, of which we have only one in the state of Maine?
Right. And it is a beautiful state and beautiful facility, Senator. It's good to see you as well. Yes, I mean, I've come from not as rural of an area as is your beautiful state, but also my North Georgia was very rural as well. I think the ranking member will agree that this, as we have a saying probably down our way, your way as well, you just can't get there from here. It just doesn't work. But our veterans need it. And so we're looking at everything from a perspective of how we do this. But the VA supports this bill. There's a few amendments that we'd like to work with you on that we think we could make it better going forward. But we support that, and of course the availability of appropriations to make it happen. Because the worst thing in the world is to have a veteran who can't get the help that they need and being able to do that. So yes, we're going to be working with you. Love to work with your staff further on that if we can find ways. I know Senator Murkowski as well. Alaska is a little bit rural, correct? You got the airplanes, so there we go. But yes, we'll be much willing to work with you on that.
The next issue I want to turn to are our state veterans' homes.
Okay.
They are critical to ensuring that our nation's veterans have access to long-term care that they earned in service to our country. My own father spent the last part of his life at the Veterans Home in Caribou, and the care was absolutely wonderful. In 2022, however, due to financial constraints, Maine actually considered closing 2 of its state's veterans homes, one in my hometown of Caribou, the other in Machias, Maine. Although the VA has raised its per diem rates in 2023, this increase has not begun to keep pace with rising costs. The VA's per diem for skilled nursing care in a state veterans home is $262, while the rate for a private sector nursing home is $424. What can the VA do to provide more financial support to state veterans homes that are having real difficulty in meeting costs and even staying open?
Senator, then this is becoming a reoccurring theme, I think, with a lot of these questions, especially with our elder care from across the states as we look forward. I met with the state veterans homes folks yesterday. As a matter of fact, they were in my office, and we were discussing these issues. There's a lot of things out there that we're looking to cut some of the, they're a partner with us, and I think sometimes they've not been treated probably as the partnership that they are. And I want to see that get better as we look at it. They also bring a lot of things to the table on ideas for that they can do that actually enhance the veteran experience, that enhance the aging experience as well. So we're willing to look at the per diem rates. We're looking at the issues. These are all, again, budgetary constrictions that we have to look at, but how can we maybe remove some of the constrictions that have bound them in certain ways? Might be also another way to look at it, maybe not, the direct financial, but it could free up funds if they weren't having to do other things. So that's something we're willing to look at. But I've met with them and continue to meet with them on an ongoing basis, and because I think they're just a vital cog in the system of what we have between our private, public, and then our state homes as well.
Thank you. I'm delighted to learn that you're meeting with them personally. I think that is really important. They play such a critical role. And what I noticed at the Veterans Home was the devotion of the staff to serving veterans and the programming that they had on special days like Veterans Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July. It truly made me feel so good about the the care that was being provided.
Well, it was great. Well, the state home stores, from New York, we actually had, and we was all over, had New York there yesterday, had Vermont, we had Tennessee and Idaho was all there represented. I know they were up here probably on the Hill as well. But look, it's just a mosaic of how we need to take care of those and especially our elderly veterans from my perspective, and how we provide that services, working in partnerships. And we're re-strengthening our state partnerships, our local partnerships across the board. And I think that's going to pay off well.
I'm almost out of time, but I do want to mention that the Elizabeth Dole Act authorized a pilot program to look at providing VA-funded assisted living services to veterans. And this is supposed to be located in 2 geographically diverse service networks to include facilities that are serving rural or highly rural veterans and state veterans homes. This is small in scope, but it's created a great deal of excitement among veterans who rely on long-term care facilities. What are your thoughts on expanding VA-funded long-term care initiatives, and when will the VA initiate the pilot programs created in the Elizabeth Dole Act?
Thanks. As far as an actual date on initiating, I'll have to get back on a specific program, but just in general on the Elizabeth Dole Act, which was brought in at the start, we're looking at that. There's 51 of the implementations on track. 10 have been fully implemented. 9 are behind schedule. There's some funding challenges we're having to look at that. A couple not started, so 72 total. We're moving down the road on this, getting that implemented. We believe it is a good thing, and we've worked with the former senator as well. She is the Dole Foundation has been great, and continue to look to probably look to you for help as far as we go funding issues on this as well.
Thank you.
Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Collins, in March, I wrote you a letter about the impact that the Trump administration's return to office policy, which makes it harder for veterans to receive mental health care. Because of this policy, many VA psychiatrists and therapists were forced to conduct sensitive telehealth appointments from crowded offices, violating ethics regulations and standards of care. Do you agree that veterans in need of mental health care deserve easily accessible treatment from qualified professionals with a guarantee of confidentiality?
Every veteran, no matter what their care is, deserves the best treatment they can. But any of our telehealth workers or anybody that was treating or even talking to someone in a facility like that was going against our policy and shouldn't have been in that position to start with. And if you have specifics, we would love to address that, because the supervisors know that should have not have been done. That was against our policy.
Okay, I will give you more details and facts.
Thank you.
See how to remedy that. Are you hearing anything about harms related to the return to office policy with regard to space, specifically for mental health practitioners?
No, we've actually, what we're doing is there's a lot, just because of space in some of the building facilities over the past few years been gone. So there's a lot that we still have not brought back in, and we're exempting certain areas. If they can't come back in, we're exempting those. Because, again, if it's in the policy, we're going to make sure that the policy's followed. And if it's not, I want to know that. So we're right now it's working. There's still a lot out there that's left to be done. But we're making this adjustment because we want the best health care. We also want the employees to have the best workplace.
Well, I would urge you to look specifically for the mental health providers, because when they can do offer their counseling services from home, it's entirely confidential. There's no one in the cubicle next to them. There's no one overhearing the problems.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And as someone who is a chaplain in the military, whose confidentiality issues I've known a lot before. Look, we believe that it's best served in a facility such as a hospital, which is secure. I'm not going to question anyone's home environment, but there is a possibility there at home. If it's not secure, you have anybody walking in, family or others coming into that as well. So we believe that the best places for that is in a VA facility working in tandem. So I agree with you. We want to do that,
Yep.
But we also need to make sure it's not just in a employee convenience, but it's also best for the veteran as well.
Right. So then you should do a full analysis of your space allotments for mental health, because as a chaplain, you wouldn't expect to be giving people faith advice when someone can overhear your whole conversation.
And that's why in fact, we've done that. I'll be happy to have our staff come and show you what we have done on our office space environment, how much what has been done across the country on what spaces are available, not available. And like I said, any place you have, Senator, and I want you to know this, if there's someone brings forth something that is,
well, we've
is
heard
not
many
then
reports.
please bring it to us, because because that's against policy, and I can't go against that.
So in addition to us getting you facts, I would like you to prepare a letter for this committee about what is the staffing that you have allotted for mental health, and what is the office construction for mental health providers in your major facilities. I can't ask you to do for every facility across the United States, but if you could pick a few, that would be helpful so that we as a committee can understand why this is an impediment to the health that our veterans need.
Okay. I will definitely do that. I tell you what would be great to have. I'll have someone from my office come by in your office, just say exactly what you're looking for. We'll make sure we can see if we can.
Yeah, but I'd like it for the whole committee.
And we'll do it for everybody.
A letter
but
for
if
the
you can
committee.
just sort of clarify because like I said, and let me just emphasize here, and just for clarity, there should be no area, even if you've gotten these complaints. I think the problem is just hearing complaint. That could be rectified the day you get the complaint. I mean, if there's actually something to be said about this, not just I don't like it or there's just a convenience issue, but if there's actual real issues with a confidentiality, there's an issue with the space, then we need to know about that, because it's not what's been reported up, and everyone is supposed to be reporting issues that they have. And believe me, we've had a ton of issues that we've had to work through. That's why not everybody has come back in, and we're taking it case by case, and we are providing exemptions where need be.
Okay. The VA's fiscal year 2026 budget highlights submitted to Congress. You provide a broad outline for how $52.7 billion requested by the VA for the Toxic Exposure Fund would be used if fully appropriated. Could you please go into greater detail about how the VA intends to use this funding for the Toxic Exposure Fund?
We will be providing the committee much more in depth on that. That is, as you know, the delay in the year, and we talked about this with the chairman and the ranking member earlier. We'll be providing more of that to come after this, and be happy to discuss it further.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Secretary Collins, welcome. Thank you. To follow on Senator Collins' comments about our rural veterans, you kind of pointed out that Alaska's in that same bucket. I'm just going to say we're bigger, we're badder, we're just more complicated, as you know. And we're very proud to host more veterans per capita in Alaska than anywhere else out there. And so how we do outreach to our rural veterans has long been a challenge. You and I have had an opportunity to talk about that. But it's everything from traveling the long distances. We're not going to be able to put that veteran in a car. More likely than not, it's going to be travel that requires flying. It may be trying to access them through telehealth, but when you have limited broadband, that's a problem. Then we have shortages of local healthcare providers. It's complicated in many ways, but all of our veterans deserve this care, and I think we recognize that. So know that I, along with Senator Collins, am very interested in any strategies that you are looking to advance to maintain and expand services in our rural communities. I have talked about establishing an outreach program that would send teams to rural areas that are off the road system to just kind of let them know about their benefits, about the services that are made available. We can't necessarily do everything, but we can at least let you know this is what your VA can do for you. And I would hope that you'd work with us to support that kind of an event.
I definitely would, and if you allow me to expand just a minute on that. I think this is one of the issues that I want us to break out of the model in many ways, and I say this in a very generic fashion. I want us to break out of the model that everything has to be the way we've always done it.
Right.
We have to go to a brick and mortar. We have to go to this. There's a clinic. We have one of the things, and it just highlighted recently, we had to close our ambulatory clinic, and this has not a rural issue, but it sort of applies to the issue. We had to close our ambulatory clinic in L.A. because of the riots and other things going on in L.A. We had interrupted almost 1,800 appointments, and some were telehealth, some we were able to move to others, but for the most part, we had folks who aren't getting care. very familiar. If you were in the middle of a rural state or Alaska or anywhere else, you're not getting. So we were already beginning to see how could we bring in mobile clinics and others, even in that area, in a safe area where our appointments could be kept. So for me, if we have those kind of resources, can we do those in states such as Alaska and others, is instead of always just defaulting to something, as you said, like a telehealth model or a visiting doctor, maybe have regular roundabouts like we have that have our health teams go out with these mobile vehicles that could actually do and provide primary care and others. And of course, they need to go elsewhere. We could do that. I think I'm willing to think outside the box to do that. It could work in a very rural state. It could work in a state like, New York, Georgia, anywhere else. The other thing.
It's just, if I can
No, it's
interrupt on that, just you've kind of picked my brain. We provide, or there are some nonprofits and some for-profits that provide mobile mammography units that go out to put them on a barge. You go up the river. It has provided access to women in rural parts of the state that would never be able to get this kind of screening. You can do that kind of teaming, but you do have to be willing to think outside the box a little bit. And I appreciate that you're looking into that. Let me ask you here about the tribal health side. I'm pleased that IHS and VA have entered into a reimbursement agreement as we're trying to figure out how we access some of the unique challenges in VA services. Office of Tribal Government Relations. This is an office that has proven to be important. I would like to know if you think that Government Relations Office will continue. And then the VA Advisory Committee on Tribal and Indian Affairs. This is another VA advisory body. This is under review. Know that the committee really does play a vital role in ensuring that Native voices are represented when VA policies are developed. We think that it's good. It helps to advance culturally competent care, strengthens tribal consultation, and helps the VA fulfill its commitments. So I don't know if you can give me an update on the current status of this committee and whether its work will continue uninterrupted, and then if you can share with me whether or not you think the Office of Tribal Government Relations will continue.
Yes, that's an yes to both. They're both going to be continuing. And also, we're continuing to outreach as well and we're, as I said earlier, we're making sure our intergovernmental offices and working with different organizations is strengthening. We brought in our caseload to make sure that we're reaching out to states, tribes, and others that is being a part of what we do. So they're both increasing, and also I'm looking forward to being, I think, if my schedule is, if they've told me correctly, I'll be up there in October, I think, around some of these issues that will be going on with the tribes.
Great. I think hopefully you're coinciding, or you're scheduling that trip to coincide with the Alaska Federation of Native Conference.
I believe it is, yes.
That's great. Mr. Chairman, I've got a couple of questions that I'm going to submit for the record. One is on the roof of the Palmer Pioneer Home. I can't let a hearing go by without mentioning that, as well as the electronic health record rollout. As you know, the Alaska VA system is going to get the rollout of this technology in 2026. There's a lot of people anxious about that because previous rollouts have not exactly been fun. So you will see those questions submitted for the record.
I look forward to that, and maybe later on, and we'll discuss that. And I look forward to the
That'd be excellent.
Electronic health record is very important.
Yes, it sure is. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to have you here, Secretary Collins.
Good to see you, Senator.
I want you to be aware that in 2014, Jason Simkoski of Stevens Point, Wisconsin, tragically died at a VA hospital due to a physician prescribing deadly amounts of opioids to treat his pain. Jason's loss led to the passage of the Jason Simkoski Memorial and Promise Act, a law to put in place standards and safeguards for providers who manage veterans' chronic or acute pain. So, Mr. Secretary, do you agree that veterans deserve to have access to safe and comprehensive pain management?
Yes, Senator, and
I'm glad
that,
you agree.
yeah, I do, and that's an easy one because, and also as we talked in your office, that Jason's Law, and also being specifically named in the budget is important to us as
Yes,
well.
indeed.
And we'll continue to do that.
So do you agree that ensuring this access for veterans is a critical part of the VA's mission to care for those who have served our nation?
Of course, I mean, in any activity, can I say something on this? Because I think you brought this up and it means a lot to you and it means a lot to me as well. It's part of a question that was asked earlier. We were discussing the death by suicide issue, and my concern, and I've
I
heard
have
this
questions on that too.
Yeah, and maybe I can help here because one of the questions that comes is we're hearing this a lot from veterans because I go to town halls. I also do work and take questions from the field on this, and there is a large concern of medication and unfortunately going straight to medication, unfortunately, in some of these cases, instead of maybe other things that work, such as counseling or non-opioid kind of issues. So this is something important to me. It's something I want to continue to see us get away from.
That was the power of Jason's Law, was that there was a retraining of all prescribers in the VA about the addictive nature of opiates. Lots of people go through their training, their medical training and others, with very little emphasis on this. And that's beginning to change, and the VA took a lead. And I want to make sure that commitment is still there. In fact, Mr. Secretary, Jason's Law has saved lives. The VA has seen a 67% decline in prescription rates of opioids over the last decade due to the diligent efforts to implement both Jason's Law and the broader Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act of 2016. But I want to talk about the focus at the same time that we're seeing staff reductions. So the law requires each VA medical facility to have a pain management team. A recent Inspector General report identifies the need for additional oversight and coordination from the office that manages this program, and also describes obstacles to hiring pain management staff, including delays in the hiring process. So, Mr. Secretary, I want to ask for your commitment to work with me and this committee to improve veterans' access to safe and effective pain management. But I'm struggling to see how that will be possible given your request to reduce staff by over 2,000 in the fiscal year 26 budget and your earlier comments that total staff at the VA may be reduced by 15%. You've insisted that clinicians will not be impacted by your staffing cuts at the VA, but the 83,000 staff you plan to eliminate will have to be drawn from program staff, oversight staff, administrative staff, and other support personnel. So, Mr. Secretary, how do you plan to continue to make progress on the implementations of programs such as Jason's Law, and how do you plan to protect veterans' rights to safe and effective pain management if you intend to reduce the administrative staff who run these programs?
Well, Senator, I appreciate the concern. It's the who we do, and I think this is the issue here. And I've said this all along, not in this committee because I haven't had a chance to be here before. The 83,000 number is, you put out anything from an administrative perspective, was a total look. By the way, which right now there is nothing going on in RIF as far as this goes. It has been the courts have held it up, and we're not doing anything in regard to RIF, and no one has been let go. The issue here is you've brought up several issues that I have. This is direct care and oversight and management of our patients. This is something we've always said is not a part of anything that we're looking at to get rid of because it actually makes a difference in the lives of veterans. You've made that very clear, and I've made that very clear as well. So again, part of the issue here is when you look at a restructuring, and I'm not sure, and I've listened to the bodies up here, and I've been a part of it. I don't think anybody would say, because I have both sides of the aisle saying we need to be more efficient at the VA. There needs to be, better use of our money. All of that has been true, and all the things we're saying. But I've also made the commitment because we've exempted 350,000 positions at this point that are not even discussed in any of the things that we're actually looking at for direct patient care. So you have my commitment that we're going to continue to make sure these jobs are protected. And I do want to, I know we're out of time here, but I just wanted to take one last thing. I'm also struggling with the issue of hiring, not in the sense of hiring freezes or anything else, because doctors and all these can be hired right now. We can get that done. Part of our issue is twofold. Number one, we have a very onerous process of bringing people on as compared to private and public medical centers. We've got to get better at that. I've talked to our VHA folks about that. That is one of the things that we've got to do. The other issue, and I would, from the chairman, ranking member, and anybody else here, we have a real issue on a caps for doctor and nurse and other pay. This is something I'm bringing as a secretary, but also someone who's, sir, I need us to look at that because it is very much affecting in markets such as growing markets of Georgia, Florida, Texas, others. I mean, I have professionals who can go down the street basically and have $300,000 to $400,000 starting salaries. It's hard to compete in those kind of environments. So I'm very sympathetic to what we're having here and what we're having to do and get this. So I would love to partner with you to continue this process because I do believe opioid hit very hard in my state and very much in my congressional district at the time. And so it's something that's very much I want to continue to work with you on.
I would just add one comment about the recruitment and retention of physicians and nurses. I've heard from a lot of the practitioners in VA practitioners in my state that when they begin to be doing the jobs of several others who have been dismissed, nurses doing the work of CNAs, and if they want to start an IV, having to also do the logistics of getting the IV pole and the IV. No. They're doing the work of several people beyond the additional overtime implications of their job. And so working conditions as well as salaries need to be looked at. You don't have to comment.
No,
I just wanted you to hear
and
that
I
from
appreciate
me.
that, Senator. But I need to comment because it's not been let go. We're not firing anyone. So, I mean, for them to
You're
say that.
You're firing the people underneath.
No, we're not
support
firing
them.
anybody. I mean, it's not from RIF. It's not from, if they're being fired, they're being fired for, a cause issue in the facility they're at.
They were let go. And I'm talking to the nurses.
But they're not from things that we've done.
Since you started.
No, I mean, tell me where they were because it's not happening. I mean, the RIF was.
Be happy to follow up with you with the examples.
If they've taken early retirement, that's not firing.
They're not there, and so you have to face that in order to keep your nurses and doctors who aren't being supported.
I'll be happy to work with you, but there's no one being fired. They may have left for other reasons, but they're not being fired.
Thank you. Senator Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary. Welcome to the committee. I want to follow up on Senator Murkowski. She brought up an issue concern in Alaska that was at the end of her time, but I want to bring up at the beginning of my time. In December of last year, the VA announced that it was beginning work to deploy the electronic health record, or EHR, system to 4 Michigan facilities, Ann Arbor, Battle Creek, Detroit, and Saginaw in mid-2026. That announcement came, as you know, after an 18-month pause in EHR deployments, during which the VA made some critical improvements to the system. During that period, veteran trust in the VA healthcare facilities where EHR had already been deployed increased. Outages in the ER system dramatically decreased, and the number of interruptions for clinicians also decreased. I reacted with some nervousness then when the VA announced in March that it would complete deployment of EHR at an additional 9 facilities next year, bringing the total to 13. The announcement came just after it was reported that VA plans to cut 80,000 employees in the coming months as well. Mr. Secretary, EHR deployment has been a complex endeavor. You now plan to deploy it across 13 facilities next year, including 4 in Michigan. And all this will happen during a planned downsizing of VA's workforce. How will you ensure that outages, slowdowns, and disruptions to veterans care will not occur once again under this new EHR deployment plan?
Thanks, Senator, and I'm glad to have your state being the tip of the spear on this reorganization. If you would allow me, and I'll try to do this very quickly, I've been said that I talk fast, but let me talk real fast here. What happened when I got there was I took a complete shutdown of this program. The previous administration, for whatever reason, I'll leave it with them, it just shut down the system and they were not moving forward. When I came in, I promised the committee when I was confirmed that this will be something we were going to look at. So really what I did was, in my first week, I took our staff that were working on this, Dr. Neil, he has been the head of it for a long time. We sat them down. I said, okay, what's the problems? The next day, I brought in Oracle, who is handling the implementation here, and I sat down, okay, so what's the problems, where we can do this? There was differences of opinion. The next week, I sat them both down, basically had a match in which they went at each other, complaining because they never were talking directly to each other. After that meeting, I said, we're going to start standardization. We're going to look at other things to make this clear. We had I believe it was 8 committees on our side that everybody had to go through to get approval to do a standardization or something dealing with the health records, which caused delays, caused cost overruns, and caused what we saw in Washington State, in which we have 6 facilities that are basically not functional, okay? They then got in a room, and this is our professionals, our careers, and Oracle's folks, and they got in a room for 2 days, and they spent nothing but how do we do this and how do we plan. And what happened is we come back from our position and says, like, standardization, we're going to take the Oracle standardization for coding and those kind of things, and we had about a 10% gap to where VA would have our uniqueness, which we have that other hospitals don't. What they came up with, not I or anybody else, but this committee and this group of high level from Oracle and from us said, is here's what we can add. That's how this is going to go about. That's why the funding for this is so vitally important, because I can't emphasize enough, if we do not transform this system, it hurts our community care process because our doctors cannot communicate with the community. Our doctors internally, if we go back to what Senator Baldwin and I were talking about retention, you're using a system that's costing us literally hundreds of millions of dollars that's used nowhere else in the world except the VA. So we need to move forward on this. I do believe we have a path that is safe, that is effective, and will be cost effective, because Oracle understands that they've got to provide this. They're now in the position of a vendor again and not anything else. So I apologize for the longer answer, but I need you to hear it.
We do want to have more efficiency, but you have to make sure we don't have undue disruptions. Last month, in my role as ranking member of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, I released a report showing that the 19 inspector generals fired earlier this year by President Trump identified billions of dollars more in potential savings to taxpayers than the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. They did a much better job of what DOGE did, and yet they were fired. The report found that the VA IG, Michael Missel, before being fired, had over $6.5 billion in the monetary impact and the potential for nearly $1.7 billion more in savings if the VA were to implement all open recommendations from the VA OIG. That's a 28-to-1 return on investment, one of the highest ROIs of IGs all across government. VA OIG successes are widespread, and just as one example, along with Michigan Attorney General, the VA OIG investigated an individual who was ordered to pay back nearly $500,000 for posing as the spouse of multiple deceased veterans and fraudulently obtained benefits. So, Mr. Secretary, I think we can agree that this is in the taxpayers' interest to continue to implement these recommendations. Will you commit today to doing all in your power to continue to implement the remaining open recommendations from the VA OIG and encourage the IG's office to continue each of the investigations that were ongoing when the IG was fired by President Trump?
Yeah.
And turning to the FY26 budget proposal, I'm certainly disappointed to see you're going to cut the IGs by 10%. And I would hope that you understand how important that office is to reducing fraud, waste, and abuse. So if you could address both of those issues.
Yeah, we look forward to working with them and have they will have the adequate resources to do what they need. And I look forward to continue working with. I made that clear in the acting. We have a regular meeting with the IG, and we're going to implement the proposals because, again, to be efficient and to be a part of this system, we need to be it. So you have my commitment to continue.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Haggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member Ossoff and Secretary Collins, welcome. Turn this on, it might help a little bit. Secretary, as members of Congress, we've got an obligation to uphold promises made to America's service members. The men and women who have protected our nation and defended our freedoms through their courageous service and tremendous sacrifice. While many issues demand our attention, few of them are as important as the responsibility that we owe to our veterans. I hear regularly from veterans in Tennessee and their families, and I suspect you're hearing the same thing nationally, that the transition to civilian life is still too often plagued by inadequate support, bureaucratic delays, and frankly, a failure to deliver high-quality care. This committee's consistently increased the funding for the VA, demonstrating our deep commitment to veterans. However, and despite years of increased funding for the VA the investment often fails to meet expectations. Wait times are too long, care quality varies, and bureaucratic hurdles have only gotten worse, not better. Secretary Collins, I appreciate your acknowledgement that reform is necessary. You and I would agree that making targeted, pragmatic cuts to wasteful and non-critical VA services without compromising direct benefits or quality of care is both necessary and achievable. And let me be clear, these goals are not mutually exclusive. Supporting our veterans requires more than just throwing funding at the department year after year. It requires accountability, effective leadership, and real results. Every dollar appropriated should translate into real improvements for those who are served. For far too long, veterans have asked for the VA that's more efficient, more accountable, and more transparent, and I think it's past time that we deliver on that promise. We must build a system that works for veterans, not against them. I want to thank you for your leadership and your commitment to the critical mission of strengthening the VA. Mr. Secretary, you've been in position now several months, but could you just walk me through what you saw your first day on the job in terms of how veterans were being treated?
I think at the core of the veterans, and Senator, I appreciate you and our relationship of working together. I think what we've seen is a veteran employees that want to do a good job. I think that's the overwhelming sentiment. I think over time, though, any organization that becomes a little more focused on its own organization loses track of its mission, and that's why I say we put veterans first, not the organization.
Yes.
And you made it clear in your statement right there that just oftentimes funds and people are not the solutions to the problem. It's the organizational processes. Just to show you, and Chairman, this is something I've mentioned before, about a week and a half, a little over a week into the job, I asked for a head count of our employees. Our HR person couldn't give me one.
You got to be kidding.
It took a week and a half to get a head count, and we didn't have it.
That's amazing.
About a week or so later, we were trying to double check this, and we went to payroll and said, okay, well, we at least can find out from payroll how many we're paying. They came back with a number of 230,000. Well, obviously, right off the top of the head, that's not the number we have. And so come to find out is when it was supposed to all be consolidated, and I think this committee and SVAC committee and others would have known this, when it's supposed to be consolidated, there was a permissive attitude that if you don't want to consolidate, that's okay. And we had about 60 facilities that were still doing their own payroll, which accounted for almost half of our employees.
Wow.
So when we discuss issues like this, and I know it's been a lot of discussion today about employees and reorganization, the question is, you know, we have hundreds of employees doing jobs in our individual hospitals and other areas, like for payroll, for contracting, for HR services, stuff that are important but do not have to be done, as you know from your business experience, are probably wasted in the sense of how we're doing that in a individualized siloed setup. Mm-hmm. So this is what we found when we came in. I want to use every dollar that this committee and this Congress gives us to help our veterans. But what we don't need to do is continue to propagate a system in which we've not seen the results that we need.
You've been to my home state of Tennessee,
Yes.
and even within my home state, we have a huge disparity in terms of the way our VA facilities are run and operated and the efficiency with which they're operated. And that disparity manifests itself in one of the lowest performing, maybe the lowest performing system in your lowest performing hospital VA hospital in your system versus one of the highest performing. And I can see that you're working on finding opportunities to standardize on best observed practices, to utilize basic business principles to bring up the standard of care across the nation. I'd love to hear you comment just a little bit more about your operational focus and your priorities as you address that.
Well, the operational focus is doing whatever it takes to take care of veterans and cutting down the bureaucracy. And I was saying earlier, I've been to almost 50 of our facilities. Probably we're close to 15 or 16 of our VAMCs, our hospitals, are more there. And what we're finding is everybody gets in a rut. It's just like in Senate. It's just like in the House. It's like in any job. You get into a rut of doing the same thing the same way all the time. And so I'm encouraging them to find new ways. I've told all of our senior leadership teams when I go in, the directors and others, I say, look, you're senior leaders. I need you 5% of the time or 10% of your time thinking about ways to improve your facilities. That's a whole different way of thinking. They've just sort of been isolated on their own. I think now if we're able to give them that encouragement to be leaders and call them if we're calling them senior leaders and paying them to be senior leaders and putting them in charge, they need to be senior leaders. And which means that they hold accountable their employees, they hold accountable to their budgets. And it's why you see in your state that you have discrepancies in facilities. You're not the only state that has that. I can name at least 1 to 2 more states just off the top of my head that within relatively 100 miles, you have 2 facilities that are operated completely different. I'm trying to bring a VA mindset that says all of our 170 plus BAMCs, our hospitals, are VA hospitals. They're not individual hospitals. They're VA that they can combine the power of the VA, combine our resources, combine our greatness, and be better for our veterans.
Well, you used the word leadership, and I applaud that. I applaud your leadership. You mentioned the employees. The vast majority of them want to do the best possible job they can. And by empowering your local leadership to do just that, to focus on the right things, I very much applaud that focus and effort. And thank you for making certain that our veterans are treated with the respect that they deserve. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on one thing, and then Senator Ossoff has a few things he'd like to ask. But in regard to the EHRM, which
Yes.
I know is so important to you and something you're really focusing on, which we all appreciate. You've been a battle of that for many years, like the rest of us. But I understand that your budget request is going to be about $3.5 billion.
Yes.
House is marking up to $2.5 billion, so there's a pretty good delta there. What if we do go, if you wind up with $1 billion less, what's that going to do as far as implementation, site selection, potential cost overrun in the future?
Yeah.
If we don't go forward and get this thing done.
It could slow it down as it has now. We've already wasted billions of dollars on this project to start with. Anything going further would just exasperate that problem.
Good to know. I just wanted an official
Okay.
from the secretary.
Yeah, I'm coming to. We've been very blessed with the budget. The president has increased, but this is an issue that I understand. I understand the hesitancy here. I get it. Okay, this started when I was still in Congress. It's been here for as long as you have, and we've wasted billions of dollars, and we've had 6 sites open. So again, we want to continue to make it happen, but to do that, we need to finish the job, because there's not a easy fix to just say, okay, we're not going to do this, we're going to do that. There's no easy fix here at this point, but I think we've got a good path moving forward.
Very good. Senator Ossoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, first of all, Dublin. You and I discussed Dublin
Yes.
yesterday, and as you're aware, predating your tenure, very significant sterilization failures that led to the potential exposure of thousands of Georgia veterans to bloodborne diseases, and indeed, some of those who may have been exposed later tested positive for HIV and hepatitis. In March of this year, the Inspector General conducted an additional inspection of facilities at Dublin and found continued egregious failures. Can you assure the subcommittee and Georgia veterans that these issues at Dublin have been resolved?
Yes. I've actually been to Dublin. I was there about 2 months ago, and we've gotten reports since then. This was about the time Dr. Lieberman, who is our chief doctor, who is over VHA, has confirmed this as well, that those have been replaced. The problem there is a conversation we just had a few minutes ago about leadership, and that's what we're trying to correct. Right now, there's still we're trying to get permanent leadership into the Dublin facility. And for those who may not know the Dublin facility, this is a facility. It's a great part of the state of Georgia. That's my, sort of, I got a lot of friends and family down there, but it's harder to recruit down there. It's harder to get folks to come into that facility and want to be there long term. So we're trying to work that out, because I think this is a leadership problem that
and forgive me, Mr. Secretary, I want to get to the leadership at Dublin, but just to be clear, in order to ensure that we're informing the public, your testimony is that these issues have been resolved at Dublin. And does that include all of the outstanding Inspector General recommendations that were found in March? The March 6th report says that there were significant failures to resolve previous OIG identified deficiencies, failure to fully implement SensiTrack, which is an electronic surgical instrument tracking system, failure to address concerns of the SensiTrack coordinator's performance on implementation, failures to resolve concerns related to sterilization facilities. Have all of the Inspector General recommendations with respect to Dublin sterilization, which were not yet implemented in March, now been implemented? No problem.
To my understanding, yes. And I'll be happy to, because
Yeah.
this is, again, for you and I both in Georgia. I'll be happy to go back and look at that again. My understanding is, yes, Dr. Lieberman said it has, but I'll be happy to go back and look at that and make sure.
Yeah, and that same March inspection, in addition to the not yet completed or implemented recommendations from the past OIG report, again at Dublin, this is March, the OIG determined that sterilization and operating room staff failed to remove non-conforming surgical instruments from the rectal tray. OIG found additional surgical instruments in non-conforming condition, and that contrary to policy, staff reprocessed and used non-conforming instruments at the facility. A range of other failures. That was in March. So your assurance that the Inspector General's recommendations have been implemented is appreciated, and I would welcome any follow-up you can provide as soon as possible so that we can reassure folks who are served by this Dublin facility that they're safe getting care there.
I will definitely do that, and not to give away, there's some issues at Dublin, especially with this. This is, as you well know, probably before your tenure as well and mine as well, Dublin has had this, there's been some issues down there before. We're going to make sure of this. We're staying on top of it. But I will, again, correct you, and
Well,
I'll get you some information.
and you mentioned that at Dublin, leadership is a major issue.
Yes.
And as of, we got this report in May. So as of May 9th, we received a report that the recruitment of a new medical director at Dublin was on hold due to the hiring freeze. Now, I know you have faced substantial pushback on the effects of that hiring freeze. Can you confirm that you've changed course and you've exempted that position now from the hiring freeze?
Those are exempted, yes. As I shared yesterday on the phone, those are exempted, yes.
Okay. And when was that exemption made? Because this was we got this on May 9th, said that recruitment of a new Dublin
May 15th.
director. May 15th.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
So that would have been after.
Atlanta. Recent Inspector General report focused on Atlanta. This is a June 12th report on staffing shortages, among other issues. Now, and I think you know this, Mr. Secretary, for years, the wait times at the VA Medical Center in Atlanta have been driven in large part by staffing shortages. I've heard it from the leadership there year after year. This Inspector General report found, as of June 12th, 208 vacancies at the Atlanta VA, including 67 provider, 42 registered nurse, 32 licensed practical nurse, 49 medical support assistant, and 18 pharmacist positions short at the Atlanta VA. What is your goal, the date that you'd like to bring the Atlanta VA up to full staffing, please?
To hire them all. If you got any,
and by when is my question?
As soon as possible. I mean, there's no delay here in this. This is and I think if we would also look at the Atlanta market as well in healthcare, we'd also see other at Piedmont, also at Northside, also at the St. Joe's and others having similar shortages in their staffing. Atlanta is a market like a lot of other markets in which healthcare, especially CNAs, LPNs, or RNs, are in great demand. They're the ones that are controlling the market. So is doctors as well.
And the wait times, as you know, in Atlanta are a particular issue. Of course, there are wait times at other facilities as well. But I appreciate your ambition.
There's nothing stopping.
I appreciate the ambition of as soon as possible, but I'd like to know. I mean, we'd like to work toward a deadline. So can you give me a date by which you'd like to ensure the Atlanta VA is fully staffed?
Well, Senator, I think you know that that's not something I can give you, but I'd be happy to do a health fair with you, and I'd come down and you and I could recruit these workers.
Well, I tell you what, why don't you?
I'd be happy. I mean, we'd be happy to do. I'm not trying to be funny here.
I know, no,
I want to do this.
I'd love
really
to work with you. I'd love to work with you to make sure we recruit those healthcare workers. But what I'd also like you to do is to get with your staff, get with the VISN, get with the leadership at the Atlanta VA, and come back to me and the subcommittee with a date by which you believe you can fill those open positions. Can you do that?
Well, I would definitely get the information to see what their goals and targets are.
Well, we got to have a goal.
Yeah, and I agree with you. So we'll get with that and we'll see what we can do.
You'll come back with a date?
We'll see. Well, I'm not sure we'll get a date. I'll have to talk to Atlanta. I mean, we'll see what their actual recruitment is. Because, I mean, again.
That's what I'm saying. I want you to talk to the leadership in Atlanta. I want you to talk to the VISN. I want to talk to your staff. And I want you to present me and the subcommittee with a date by which you think it's feasible to fill those spots.
I'll be happy to present you a plan, but also you're also setting up a date, in which I understand you're trying to do, to set up a date that may or may not be capable, because you couldn't get the same answer from Northside CEO or Piedmont CEO or anyone else to fill theirs.
I just know that deadline-driven work
I agree with you
is
completely.
often the most efficient and determined work, and I want something that's fair to hold you accountable to. So will you get a target date?
We'll work together to see where
Mr.
it's at
Secretary,
right
isn't
now.
it?
I'm not going to play the game, okay?
What game?
Because it's not a game, because there's no other facility in the world that will say, by X date, we're going to definitely have people hired.
I didn't say you definitely. I'm looking for a goal. You don't think leadership at other healthcare facilities set goals for when they're going to fill open medical slots?
I think they fill them as quickly as they possibly can. We hire over 1,000 people.
So you will not present a target.
I would like to have them filled by the end of the fiscal year. That'd be great.
By the end.
Now,
of the
will it be filled? I'm not going to say they'll be filled, because there's a lot of other factors in there that I can't control.
Mr. Secretary, and I know we're belaboring this, Mr. Chairman, but this isn't a gotcha. What I'm saying, this is just good management practice. I just want to know. I want to know when you believe it can be done. I tell you what. Let's put it that way.
Hopefully.
No, you don't need to tell me right now. I'm not even trying to put you. Why don't you talk to the VISN, talk to the facility, talk to your staff, and come back and let me know by when you think it can be done. Will you do that?
I look forward to the conversation. Yeah, I look forward to the conversation.
Will you let me
You're
know?
asking for me an answer that I can't give you, because I've not talked to the other people.
I'm not asking for the date. I'm asking if you can give me a target.
Yes, I can get. We can look toward giving you a target. Yes.
Okay, that's all I needed on Atlanta, Mr. Secretary. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just got some additional questions about a letter that I sent you at the beginning of this Congress. But first, Augusta. WRDW, WJBF, Augusta reported this month, an IG report says VA Augusta leaders fostered, quote, a culture of fear with a, quote, threatening and abusive communication style, and allegedly retaliated against employees who shared concerns. I know the acting director was put on leave pending an investigation, and I think that's a positive step. We spoke yesterday, Mr. Secretary. You confirmed you were recruiting for leadership at both of these facilities. Can you confirm that it's among your highest priorities to get a permanent new leadership staff in at Augusta?
Yes, and I'm to further elaborate without trying to belabor this, because I know where we're at, but there's actually two incidences here that I'm going to report. The one that you just mentioned was done earlier, if not right before I came in, and that was the workplace issue, the leadership issue. That person actually was I called, failed up, and was put in the VISN and administrative role. I made the call that we needed to put that person on administrative leave, because if the reports had already shown that there was a toxic workplace, putting our veteran employees and our VA employees in a bad place, in a workplace. So that one was out. That was the issue we did then. So then there's another that we tried to replace that one with, that unfortunately I can't speak in open setting for personnel issues and reasons here, but has been removed as well. And that's when, as I told you yesterday on the phone, we now have another acting, I think is in now, correct? There's another acting is in at Augusta, and we are looking, to finish your question, I just wanted to give you the total picture. We are looking for permanent. That should be one of our flagship hospitals in our system. And so, yes, we're looking for someone to take that permanently.
Okay, final issue, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for indulging the questions. Sent you a letter February 13th, a number of members of the Appropriations Committee, asking some basic questions about DOGE engagement with the VA. At 13 specific oversight questions. You and I then spoke on May 6th. So we hadn't gotten any kind of meaningful response. You committed to get me meaningful responses. Still have not gotten responses to these questions. And I think this is an opportunity to bring transparency to an issue about which there's been a lot of public controversy and concern. So I haven't gotten answers to these questions that I asked, and a number of members asked in February. So I want to ask you now, which DOGE personnel have visited VA facilities?
I don't understand the question.
Okay, which DOGE personnel?
Okay.
So personnel who are acting under the auspices or authority of the Department
we
of Government
have
Efficiency have visited. Let's start with VA headquarters.
Are you talking about our liaisons who actually work for the VA?
I'm asking.
We have 3.
I'm asking which DOGE personnel have visited VA headquarters.
The ones that work for us.
Okay, what are their positions?
They're advisors. They're looking at through our contracts and stuff like that.
Okay, are they still doing that?
Yes.
Okay. Have they accessed VA patient medical records?
They are acting in their role as employees as a normal VA employee would do, and are authorized to do anything that they're currently doing.
So,
and I'll be happy to take these further for the record if you like.
Well, Mr. Secretary, I asked you these questions on February 13th in a letter.
Okay.
It's the end of June. I mean, you were a member of Congress. Would that be satisfactory to you?
If I'm offering you a solution, yes.
Well, we spoke in May.
And I'm offering you a
said,
solution.
No, come on, Mr. Secretary. I asked you these questions in February. We spoke in May. You said you get me the answers, and here you're saying you'll take them.
And in
for
all
the record.
fairness, you just asked me a question about who DOGE employees walked into my facility.
A question
Don't tell
I
me
first
you're trying
asked-
to be
a question I
trying to be
first
serious
asked you
about
in
this. I mean, what DOGE employees? I mean,
No, what I just
yeah.
asked you was,
Mr. Chairman,
what I just asked you is, have DOGE personnel access
I'll be
to
happy to
medical
take-
records of veterans?
and
in
I
the
have
VA
told you
database?
that I told you they're acting in the roles under everything that
There
they're
would be a
supposed to do as
lot
VA.
less concern about this if the answers weren't so cagey on it all.
There's no caginess to it. Any VA employee who has access to anything and work at the VA is totally responsible and trained
Let's
to do
work
what they
together,
do.
Mr. Chairman, to get some clarity on this, because I'm not satisfied. It's been months. I don't know why there is such a lack of willingness to engage on this topic. We will follow up, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senator.
One thing that's really important, you mentioned that I'm an optometrist and eye doctor and practiced with 9 other doctors with the surgery center, and I really am very familiar with the medical aspect as far as how difficult it is to get people right now. But it all goes back to your CAPS. And as far as filling positions, these critical positions, leadership positions, they simply aren't going to do that because they work for a fraction of the pay, doing very important things at the VA. The similar roles in private sector, they probably make twice the money. That's just a number,
Yep.
but significantly more. So if you would work with our staffs regarding a proposal with the CAPS, I think that would be really helpful. And that's something that, we talk about deadlines and we talk about all this other stuff. This is a very doable thing.
Yep.
This is something that we can work together, and I know you're really interested in solving the problem. So, but that's the way to solve it. It's as you pointed out, it's a huge problem throughout, not only the VA, but just in medicine in general, as we look at our major facilities throughout the country.
Yes, Senator Chairman, I hear it everywhere I go, and you and the ranking member, that's one of those, and I've worked bipartisan in this place. Well, I think that's something we could definitely work on. It would at least help get us to the point where we can hire better. So I thank you for that, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. So give us some ideas, and we'll move forward. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your service and dedication, and again, it's so important that we work together to provide the care for those who defended us in uniform, as are one of you in that case also. So for members of the subcommittee, any questions for the record should be turned into the subcommittee staff no later than the close of business on Tuesday, July the 1st. And as always, we appreciate the staffs on both sides that work so hard to make these things possible. With that, we're adjourned.